In our last video, we showed you how BlackRock owns the money. Before that, we showed you how Elon Musk owns the infrastructure. But there is one thing more valuable than money, and there is one thing more dangerous than rockets: information. If you want to control a population, you don't need to buy their houses. You just need to control what they see, what they read, and what they believe. There is one company that has quietly become the gatekeeper of human knowledge. A company that knows every question you have ever asked, every place you have ever been, and every secret you have ever typed into a search bar at 3 a.m. Google. We think of Google as a utility, like water or electricity. It's just the internet. It's helpful. It's free. And for 20 years, their motto was famously, "Don't be evil." But that motto was a lie. Google isn't a library. It is the most sophisticated surveillance engine in human history. While you are watching the screen is watching you. They track your eyes. They track your location. They track your voice. And recently, in a series of historic federal court rulings, they were finally declared what they have always been: an illegal monopoly. So how did two PhD students in a garage build a company that knows more about you than your own family? And now that they have conquered search, what happens when they decide to conquer truth? This is the evolution of Google. To understand the trap, you have to go back to the beginning. 1998. The internet was a mess. It was a chaotic pile of websites. If you wanted to find something, you used Yahoo or Alta Vista, and the results were terrible. Enter Larry Page and Sergey Brin. They invented something brilliant called PageRank. It was a way to organize the chaos. It treated links like votes. If a lot of people linked to a website, it must be good. It was democratic. It was clean. And most importantly, it had no ads. In the early days, Larry and Sergey hated advertising. They famously wrote an academic paper saying that advertising causes search engines to be biased. They wanted to build a pure tool for humanity. But there was a problem. They were broke. Running a search engine is expensive. You need servers. You need electricity. By 2000, the dot-com bubble had burst. Investors stopped writing checks. Google was bleeding money. They had a choice. They could either shut down, or they could sell their soul. They chose the latter. They hired Eric Schmidt to be the CEO, and they introduced AdWords. This was not just a billboard. This was something new. They realized that when you search for back pain, you are telling them something intimate. You are telling them you are in pain. You are telling them you need a doctor. You are telling them you are vulnerable. They realized that the user was not the customer. The user was the product. They started auctioning off your attention to the highest bidder. And it worked. Money poured in. They became billionaires overnight. But then, they hit a wall. Knowing what you search for is valuable, but it's not enough. To truly predict your behavior, to truly own the market, they needed to know what you did when you weren't searching. They needed to leave the browser. They needed to enter the real world. And that is when the surveillance really began. The year was 2004. Google launched Gmail. People loved it. It gave you 1 gigabyte of storage for free, which was insane at the time. But nobody read the fine print. The cost of free storage was that Google had the right to scan every single email you sent and received. They knew who your friends were. They knew when your flight was leaving. They knew if you were breaking up with your girlfriend. But that was just the start. In 2005, they bought a tiny company called Android. At the time, everyone used flip phones. But Google saw the future. They realized that if they could put an operating system in your pocket, they could track you 24 hours a day. Today, Android runs on 3 billion devices. It tracks your GPS location every few minutes, even if you turn location history off. In fact, the Associated Press found that even when users paused location tracking, Google still recorded their movements. They knew where you slept. They knew where you worked. They knew if you visited a psychiatrist or a divorce lawyer. Then came Street View. In 2010, a scandal broke that should have destroyed the company. It was called The Why Spy scandal. Google sent cars driving around the world to take photos of streets. But they were not just taking photos. Hidden inside the cars were antennas scanning Wi-Fi networks. They did not just record the names of the networks. They intercepted data. They captured emails, passwords, and browsing history from unencrypted Wi-Fi networks inside people's homes. Think about that. A private company drove a car past your house and stole your digital mail. When they were caught, they claimed it was an accident, a mistake by a rogue engineer. But investigations revealed that managers knew about it. They paid a fine, a tiny fraction of their profit, and kept moving. This is the pattern. Push the boundary, invade privacy, get caught, pay a fine, repeat. But the biggest lie of all was Incognito Mode. For years, we were told that if we opened that dark window in Chrome, we were safe. We were private. But in 2024, the truth finally came out in court. Internal emails revealed that Google engineers mocked the idea of privacy. One engineer wrote that Incognito Mode should be called the guy in the sunglasses and trenchcoat mode because everyone still recognizes you. They admitted that they tracked users even in Incognito Mode. They collected billions of data points. In April 2024, they settled the lawsuit. They agreed to delete billions of records. But notice what happened. They did not stop tracking. They just agreed to change the wording on the screen to tell you that you are not actually hidden. Why do they need all this data? It is not just to sell you shoes. It is to build a digital voodoo doll of you. Shoshana Zuboff, a professor at Harvard, calls this surveillance capitalism. Google takes your data, your location, your fears, your health records, and feeds it into a machine that predicts your future. And they are not just predicting it, they are manipulating it. In 2019, a whistleblower revealed Project Nightingale. Google had secretly partnered with Ascension, a massive hospital chain, to harvest the health records of 50 million Americans. Doctors' notes, lab results, diagnoses, Google had access to it all, without the patient's consent. They want to know you better than you know yourself, but knowing your digital life was not enough. To truly own the human experience, they had to own your physical body. For a decade, Google lived in the cloud, but in 2019, they decided to come down to earth. They spent $2.1 billion to buy Fitbit. Regulators were terrified. They asked, why does a search engine need to know my heart rate? Google promised they would not use the health data for ads, but that misses the point. They do not need to show you an ad for heart medicine. They just need to know when you are stressed, when you are sleeping, when you are working out. By combining your Fitbit data with your search history, they have a complete biological profile of you. They know your physical vulnerabilities. Then, they bought Nest for $3.2 billion. Now, Google is not just on your wrist. They are on your wall. They control your thermostat. They control your doorbell camera. They control your smoke detector. If you have a Google Home, a Nest Cam, and an Android phone, there is effectively no moment in your life where you are not within range of a Google sensor. They have built a physical panopticon, a world where the walls have ears, and the ears are connected to a server farm in Oregon. But what happens when you try to block them? What happens when you try to close the blinds? This brings us to the browser war. For years, the one defense we had against tracking was AD blockers. We installed extensions like uBlock Origin to protect ourselves, but Google owns Chrome. Chrome is used by 65% of the planet. In 2024 and 2025, Google rolled out a controversial update called Manifest v3. They claimed it was for security, but in reality, it broke the knees of the most popular ad blockers. It limited the ability of extensions to filter traffic. They realized that if they control the browser, they control the rules of the internet. They can force the ads through. They can force the tracking scripts to run. It was the ultimate flex of monopoly power. They did not just win the game, they rewrote the code of the game itself to ensure they could never lose. For years, Google claimed they won because they had the best product. They said, competition is just a click away. But in 2024 and 2025, the US Department of Justice finally pulled back the curtain. What they found was not a free market. It was a rigged casino. It turns out, Google was not just winning the game. They were paying the other players to lose. The first bombshell was the search monopoly verdict. Judge Amit Mehta ruled that Google is a monopolist. Why? Because they paid Apple $20 billion a year to be the default search engine on the iPhone. They knew that if they did not pay Apple, people might actually try something else. So they used their massive war chest to suffocate competitors before they could even be born. But the darker story, the one that truly reveals their character, is Jedi Blue. In 2018, Google faced a threat. A new technology called header bidding was allowing websites to sell their ad space to anyone, bypassing Google's fees. It was a threat to their empire. And Facebook was about to support it. If Facebook joined header bidding, Google's monopoly would crack. So Google cut a deal. They codenamed it Jedi Blue. They secretly approached Facebook and offered a deal. If you kill this technology, we will give you a special advantage in our auctions. We will let you win even if you should not. It was classic collusion. They rigged the ad market to ensure that no one else could compete. And then there was Project Bernanke. Yes, they actually named it after the Federal Reserve chairman. In this secret program, Google used data from past auctions to manipulate future auctions. They effectively looked at the other players' cards before placing their own bet. They were the auctioneer, the bidder, and the house. This is why, in April 2025, Judge Leonie Brinkema handed down the second historic verdict, ruling that Google had illegally monopolized the digital advertising technology market. They had built a digital feudalism. Every time you see an ad, every time a newspaper makes money, every time a small business tries to find a customer, Google takes a tax. They own the roads of the internet. But monopolies eventually die. And Google knows this. They know that the era of search is ending. People are tired of blue links. People want answers. So Google is preparing for their final evolution. They are building something that makes their search engine look like a pocket calculator. In 2014, Google bought a small, mysterious British company called DeepMind. They paid $500 million. At the time, DeepMind had no product, no customers, no revenue. So what were they buying? They were buying a mission statement. DeepMind's goal was simple: solve intelligence. The word mission mattered. They wanted to build a GI, artificial general intelligence, a machine that can think like a human, but 1 billion times faster. In 2016, the world saw a glimpse of this power. DeepMind's AI AlphaGo played against Lee Sedol, the world champion of the ancient game Go. Go is not like chess. It has more possible moves than there are atoms in the universe. You cannot win by calculation. You need intuition. You need creativity. In Game 2, the AI made a move, Move 37, that shocked the world. No human would ever have played that move. It looked like a mistake, but it was not. It was original. The machine had not just learned the rules of the game. It had understood the game. Lee Sedol eventually retired from professional play. He said, "Even if I become the number one, there is an entity that cannot be defeated." Google took this power and integrated it into everything. They launched Gemini. Gemini is not a search engine. It does not want to send you to a website. It wants to be the website. If you ask how to fix your sink, Google used to send you to a plumber's blog. Now, Gemini watches the blog, steals the information, and gives you the answer directly. The plumber gets 0 clicks. The blogger gets 0 ad revenue. The internet as we know it, the creator economy, dies. Google eats the entire web and digests it into a single answer. But here is the terrifying part. When Google gives you the answer, who decides what the truth is? We have already seen the cracks. When Gemini first launched, it refused to generate images of historical figures accurately due to bias filters. It rewrote history in real time to fit a political narrative. This was not a glitch. It was a feature. When you control the AI that answers the world's questions, you control reality. They are moving from organizing information to thinking for you. And let's look at circular ownership again. Who owns Google? The top shareholders are Vanguard and BlackRock. It is the same loop. BlackRock owns the money. Musk owns the infrastructure. Google owns the data. They are the triumvirate of the 21st century. So, let's look at the evolution. Part 1. The librarian. 2 kids in a garage who wanted to make the internet useful. Part 2. The SPI. A corporation that realized the only way to make money was to turn its users into a product, tracking every step they took. Part 3. The monopolist. A ruthless empire that rigged the auctions, crushed the competition, and taxed the entire digital economy. Part 4. The sovereign AI. An entity that is currently cannibalizing the human internet to build a synthetic brain. They dropped the motto, "Don't be evil," years ago. And you have to ask yourself, why? Maybe it is because when you have the power of a god, evil is just a matter of perspective. Google knows who you are. The question is, do you know who they are?